What is going on, my fellow Jedi and Padawans? Welcome back to another Jedi gaming video. Now, my Titans, I'm sure y'all have not pulled out this exotic in quite some time, but it got a nice little buff, in my opinion, for the PvE realm, which increases that explosion damage and can chain them back and back and back to each other with the Severance Enclosure. Now this thing right here is pairing with our Solar Titan and Bonk Hammer because it's all about those powered melee final blows, which we won't have them up in any other fashion as much as we do right here with this Solar Titan build. Right here is the Severance Enclosure perk with the stats that I was kind of going for. Resilience as well as discipline for sure on this build. Since we're going to be using our throwing hammer, it'll be up basically all the time as it is. So I wanted to be able to have that grenade up as much as possible. Totally up to you, whatever you want to use. Incendiary or healing or solar, whatever feels right to you. But definitely want that 100 resilience. Just one for Titan because of our barricade, as well as just that end game content. That 30% damage reduction is super nice. As for the exotic mod right here, now hear me out, this is a big word for me. Spheromatic Trigger. Powered melee final blows allow a damaging explosion. Finishers and final blows against more powerful targets increase this radius and damage of the explosion. With that buff that I was talking about, those explosions can also trigger more explosions if the explosion gives off the final defeat. So if I hit a melee on an enemy that is close to somebody that is already been defeated and the explosion defeats that red bar will also explode with an exploding damaging. So it is a beautiful little trigger that we have right here with the synergy of throwing hammer as well as these explosions and solar explosions on top of that. Now hear me out, the drip looking fire again. I think this looks really good with the Severance Enclosures, but for our mods, for me, importantly, we got our double solar weapon surge for that 17%, as well as dilation to help this last a little bit longer. On your chest piece, totally up to you, whatever content you are going into. Now on our arms, I went with heavy-handed on this so we can create orbs of power with all of those melee defeats on our Bonk Hammer. Causing damage with those powered melees also gives us our grenade back faster, so with that 100 discipline as well as impact, we're getting it back very quickly with focusing strike as well, so we get our class ability on top of that when we make those powered melee attacks. So it allows us to have our class ability up as well as our grenade up basically all the time with this build, as well as having powerful friends to share the armor charge as well as that solar strand siphon, which you will see why in a second here. As for the weapons, you can see right here, we got that avalanche from our dawning event with subsistence incandescent, just like this in this slot. You can really use anything solar for this. If you want some damage, throw on Apex Predator, Cataclysmic, even right here a tracking cluster bomb, which I use in Crucible, but why not for that solar synergy? We're going to be using Sunshot for sure with this build for that solar synergy. Easiest, the best exotic hand cannon for the PvE realm. We're going to be using that juicy scatter signal right here with overflow controlled burst. Easily one of the best damaging fusion rifles in the game, and it just pairs well with that solar and strand synergy that we have on our artifact, which you will see right here. That synergy that I'm talking about comes from these right here. First off, we're going to have that flame, fiber, and freeze for the solar strand siphon combo on our helmet. Flint Striker, so those rapid solar weapon precision hits and final blows grant us being radiant, which we will have that on our subclass as well. Kindling Trigger, while we are radiant, our solar weapons apply scorch to unscorched targets, with that torch being applied. While radiant, we deal increased weapon damage to combatants affected by strand, which we will have from our fusion rifle in unraveling orbs, because when we pick up those orbs of power that we are creating with our hammer, as well as our weapons. We are going to get unraveling rounds with Horde Shuffle. When we damage an unravel target, we have the potential to create threadlings on this build as well. On top of that, we're going to be able to do some extra bit of damage with our super when we are casting it nearby those allies, as well as revitalizing blast, which weakens champions and bosses with our solar abilities, as well as ray of precision. With those radiant precision final blows, we cause combatants to ignite when we are radiant. Right here for our abilities, aspects, and fragments, I went with Towering Barricade with Strafe Lift. Our Throwing Hammer, you could use your melee strike if you want, but Throwing Hammer allows us to proc Severance Enclosure way more often. Now, I have really been liking Incendiary Grenade for that extra stacks of Scorch, which we can cause even more ignitions, which just pair with that Severance Enclosure and the explosions from that. Now, we're going to be using Roaring Flames with Soul Invictus. So Roaring Flames is going to give us our solar abilities and increased damage, stacking up to ×3 on solar ability of final blows or ignitions, why that's extra Scorch in Incandescent is very nice. Now we're going to be using Soul Invictus as well, so those ability final blows, Hammer of Soul impacts, as well as defeating Scorched targets, creates sunspots, so our abilities regenerate faster and our super drains more slowly while we're standing in those sunspots, allowing us to have our hammer, our class ability, as well as our Incendiary Grenade up basically all the time, as well as pairing it with the mods that we talked about earlier. Now, adding to the ignitions of this build, we're using Ember of Ashes, so we apply more Scorch stacks to targets, with Ember of Torches to keep us radiant when we aren't getting it from our weapons. We can use it with all the melee attacks that we are getting on this build with that Throwing Hammer. Ember of Imperium, when we get that Restoration or Radiant, when we get final blows with our abilities or weapons, it extends the duration of both of those, so this will help us with that Radiant to keep it up at all times as well, because we're going to have our grenade up very often, have our hammer up consistently, as well as all those solar defeats with our LMG or our hand cannon. Last but not least, Solus right here. Radiant and Restoration effects have that increased duration, so again, it just adds to Empyrean as well as Solus right here. So, in my opinion, I think that this build can really take on any type of content, GMs, raids, anything like that. Is it going to be the most meta damage output, etc.? No, but for ad clear, actually not bad with those explosions that come from the Severance Enclosure and its exotic perk, especially like I have it paired with this Solar Titan here. We're getting Scorch and Ignition explosions, as well as the explosions from our chest piece, so it's like a little double whammy just in itself right there, adding to the aspect of ad clear. And then with the damage, if you want, like I said, you can throw on like a bait and switch rocket that'll output a lot of damage, so you don't got to worry about it as much with other aspects like your super. But even then, because of our artifact that we have this season, when we cast that Hammer of Souls nearby our allies, we're going to get increased super damage anyways, so this thing is very good at all aspects of the PvE realm. Titans, definitely give it a try out. Very fun solar build for y'all. So again, appreciate all that support. Don't be afraid to like and subscribe the video. Hit that little bell if you want to stay up to date on the channel. Join the Discord. Everything's down in the prescriptions down below. I should say in the description down below. So I appreciate all you guys. I will catch you guys in the next one. Peace.